Good day from Western Australia. Now, I've been telling you stories about a thing called Hermetism since a year and a half ago. To summarize it again, it is a family of highly non-orthodox practices that could be characterized as devil worship. There's not much new about these things. They've been around since biblical times. I mean this. I will give you examples in what follows. Particular practices that qualify as hermetic are, apart from hermetic witchcraft itself, which may have many variations, Freemasonry and Wicca. Yes, Freemasonry is Hermetism and thus really qualify as devil worship. But today we're not talking Freemasonry, we're talking Wicca witchcraft and its associated philosophy. However, I really feel like I owe you guys an explanation. I mean, how is it possible for someone to show so much eloquence? As much eloquence as to pull magical rabbits out of hats all of the time. And things are very simple as far as I am concerned. I have a good ear for music and that is all. I certainly don't have the voice for this stuff, but my ears are highly musical. Other than that, I'm just a regular guy, grew up in your average provincial town in Eastern Europe. A very average town, I'd say. I had normal colleagues, I had dear friends. I was always interested in doing interesting stuff and so on and so forth. Yes, I'd say the type of stuff I liked was always of high degree of interest, so to speak. And I do like to visit Europe from time to time and see my friends again and catch up with what they've been up to, I guess. That's all. I'm just a normal guy, just a normal person that does like to indulge in interesting stuff and has an ear for music. For example, last time I went to my hometown, I got very drunk. I was so drunk I could barely get a feeling for what I was doing. As it happens, I spent the night over at a dear friend's apartment. I mean, we got drunk together and stuff, right in the heavy metal bar we did used to go to in high school. Well, I got drunk, she kind of did not. Nothing unusual so far. Young ladies don't drink as much as us guys. They do like to be ladies, you know what I mean. I needed a place to sleep. She said, okay, you can sleep at my apartment. We stopped to get a hamburger or two on the way to her place. And when we arrived, I had the couch and she had the bed in the same room. And we started chit-chatting about the good times we had in high school and so on and so forth. And she goes to me like, Val, you see the lamp over there? And I go like, yes, I see it. And she goes like, do you remember my boyfriend? The guy that came to our town just to be with me? And I go like, oh yes, where is he now? She goes like, he went back to his town, but he did tell me that that particular lamp is covered in human skin. And I go like, really? That can't be right. Did he actually say that to you? Were these exactly his words? And she goes like, yes, Val, I swear these were his words. Now what do you think about a thing like that? And I go like, no way. There's no way that lamp is covered in human skin. Good night. And we went to sleep, had a very resting sleep, woke up in the morning, I thanked her for the hospitality and kissed her goodbye. And that was everything. Yes, going back to Europe is very nice. Spending time in the places you grew up in is a very, very nice experience. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about Wicca witchcraft and its associated philosophy. First and foremost, when thinking about Wicca practices, it is helpful to think about some of the more relevant ancient Celtic beliefs. Some of these benign practices survive to this day. For example, during a particular festival of the cold moon, the moon of December, if found under a branch of mistletoe, it is a nice thing to give a girl a kiss. The symbolism of mistletoe is that of fertility, and the symbolism of the cold moon is an expectancy towards the next natural cycle, an expectancy for the spring, a hope that nature shall awaken again to life. Now, Celtic druids used special mistletoe knives in order to cut mistletoe. These mistletoe knives were made of gold as a token of significance or value invested by the community in these particular rituals. The symbolic meaning is none other than that of a certain ritual of midwifery. Midwifery can be understood in various ways, and it isn't within the scope of this particular presentation to go too much in depth as to what midwifery exactly represents. Yet, midwifery has to do with uncovering the mystery of birth. It is a benign practice that's been practiced since basically mankind itself. Now that's the druid knife pictured there, and that is a Wicca knife, which is used for a totally different purpose. As I entertain, we are in fact accustomed by now. So we can see from the start, this is pure devil worship, pure Satanism, a frontal attack on humanity, a frontal attack on God, and a frontal attack on the Genesis, a frontal attack on creation. Yes, Hermetism in general as a form of satanic worship is a frontal attack on the creation, as I call it, or on nature and the world, if you'd prefer this terminology. I can only entertain the guess that the inherent hope in carrying this attack on creation is that, in fact, the world shall come to an end. This is carried through for the reason that life itself is associated with pain mostly and decadence in this particular system of thought. And philosophers of this craft don't hesitate to blame the creator for the state of fall of mankind. Now let's dig into the concrete stuff after these somewhat abstract considerations. Wicca is first and foremost a ladies' space, as it is called. Therefore, the correct application of the practice, if I am able to say there is such a thing as a correct application for Wicca, is self-defense. That should be the correct application, self-defense and self-protection. Yet things aren't done like this these days, as far as it can be seen from the plenitude of Wicca material that circulates on the internet. There exist things called esbats and things called sabbats, designated according to phases of the moon, and as far as it can be told, esbats are period of healing and rest, while sabbats demand ritual and demand sacrifice. But let's take things slowly, as I do get the feeling I'm moving a little fast through this. A very first observation on the topic is the mode of communication, that is, of verbal communication, which is highly peculiar. I guess I'd call this type of communicating implicit, and by this I mean fully implicit. Verbalizing things in an explicit way within Hermetism in general, and this applies to Freemasonry too. Verbalizing things explicitly will very likely be seen as a terrible mistake. And as a fact, this is what is generally meant in witchcraft by initiation. The fact that things are showed to a candidate during initiation and never told explicitly. That happens in Masonic ritual, it happens in Hermetism in general, and it is surely the rule of thumb in Wicca. That is possibly the foremost observation on these matters. We talk, and every proper initiate knows what in fact we are talking about, yet we are never allowed to be explicit. and therefore we are able to communicate easily and without difficulty over open channels of communication such as YouTube and Facebook. The very first principle of Wicca and of satanic witchcraft in general is to treat the practice with respect, and by this it is meant that the practice should be taken with uttermost seriousness. One should never as a fact talk about it in a derogatory fashion, and in general, as a rule of thumb, one should keep things discreet, if not secret, in their totality. Whenever communicated, things should be presented as religious in their most fundamental nature and having to do with a particular type of spirituality that we may be able to call esoteric. Hence, freedom to practice Wicca openly, or as open as it gets, as we can in fact judge, is freedom of religion, nothing more, nothing less. And I did promise you some sort of evidence that these practices are as old as the world itself, and here is the evidence that I did promise. It is found in the book of Proverbs in chapter 7, and it reads like this. My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers, write them upon the table of thine heart. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman, that they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flatters with her words. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and beheld among the simple ones I discerned among the youths a young man void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner, and he went away to her house in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. And behold, there met him a woman with the attire of a harlot and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn, her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lies in wait at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with an impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me, this day have I paid my vows. Therefore came I forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works and fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the good man is not at home, he is gone a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed. With her much fair speech she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips she forced him. He goes after her straight away, as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hastes to the snare, and knows not that it is for his life. A Wicca will sometimes be heard saying, marry a meet, marry apart. This amounts in fact to some evidence for my previous claim that basically the practice itself is to be used for self-defense purposes only. Yet this does not happen, as I also said. Wicca is a polytheistic structure. There exists a mother goddess and a horn god. Sacrifices are brought to the horn god itself. Francisco de Goya was an extremely eloquent illustrator for these practices in general. There were others, but Goya is definitely a giant. Now you are able to see there the pentagram. It corresponds to the 4 elements characteristic to practices associated to Hermetism in general, plus the 5th element, which is precisely our spirit. The pentagram itself is placed upright as a bringer of fortune, and to symbolize the fact that the 5 elements in question are placed in harmony within a person's system. And this is important, as for example placing the pentagram in an inverted fashion is considered to be a token of extreme bad luck, apart from showing that the elements within a person are present in an animalistic fashion. Now, the following fact is also of uttermost importance, as it is an essential characteristic of Wicca witchcraft and of Hermetism in general as far as it is concerned. A particular sacrifice, carried most probably during a Sabbath, amounts to nothing else than a transformation of the 5 elements in question. And provided the sacrifice offering displays a structural imbalance within these elements, it is not only convenient to sacrifice them as long as Hermetism is concerned, it is also advisable. So there does exist, as it can be seen, an ethics of Wicca sacrifice. Sometimes Wicca will be heard saying that they do or do not believe in the devil. This is just implicit jargon. The language is implicit, as already noted. This particular statement means that the witch does or does not operate together with a male partner, meaning that she is not or that she is a solitary witch. And there exists a plethora of jargon concerning the matter at hand, and in order to conceptualize things properly, it is in fact advisable to actually master the jargon. For example, a broom closet witch is one that operates without the knowledge of their immediate family, which by implication means that there exist witches that are not broom closet. Hence the doors are open to an entire industry, an entire profession, together with its associated trade unions, places of gathering, its associated hierarchy, and its associated standard code of practice. There also exists the pretense that a law, similar to what in Buddhism is called karma, is what truly guides witchcraft and Wicca in particular. This is in fact incorrect. Karma, as understood in Buddhism, is a law of the universe, meaning karma is not administered through human agency. The whole idea that humans themselves can administer karma would in fact be preposterous to a Buddhist that knows what they are talking about. The essential principle of non-harming is also misleading. What it is meant through this principle is that someone who is to be harmed has in fact animalistic nature while lacking in human spirit. Hence that person cannot be called a human. Hence it is just as if an animal sacrifice is brought before the horned god. This is in fact a rudimentary type of logic, to say the least. This logic is plain fallacy. Notice that a horned god is also the god of Masonic ritual, as Freemasons call their deity a GOAT, or god of all things. There exists other elements in Wicca that mimic practices of Buddhism. There exists a form of mindfulness, a form of meditation, which I would suspect is actually showing cruelty towards the being which is to be sacrificed. These practices imported from Buddhism have therefore nothing to do with Buddhism itself. They are only used for the purpose of implying that the being which is to be sacrificed isn't a human being but merely an animal, and that the priest or priestess in question does have the moral right to sacrifice that animalistic being. We have to remember that Wicca, as we now know it, is in fact a synthetic practice. The shape it is practiced in, that is. It was introduced in the 1950s in England, yet the practices themselves are as old as the Old Testament, basically, as we have indeed shown above. There also exists a thing called a Book of Souls or a Book of Shadows, or properly termed a grimoire, in which the journey of a Wicca is documented in a heavily coded fashion. These are things personal to witches and may differ heavily from one Wicca to another, so we're not discussing those here. Enough to note, again, that the language is highly implicit and there exists an overall attitude that what the Wicca is doing is in fact a very normal thing. Business as usual, nothing out of the ordinary. Other jargon includes what is called a spell and associated spell work. This is in fact synonymous to what is called a charm or charming someone. It is very often sexual, but it may not be just sexual, it may present other components. This is in fact the core of the craft in question, and it sort of contradicts the idea that Wicca is a passive practice, that it is only carried in self-defense. No, Wicca is, as a matter of fact, a highly active occupation. The rest of this stuff is about scented candles and oils, artifacts that make guys or people fall asleep, and certain crystals that are supposedly manufactured from the body of the victim. But we're not getting into these details here. Thanks for your attention.